Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely exhausted, even though nothing bad happened? No argument, no shouting, no obvious conflict. And yet, something in you feels heavy. That kind of tiredness isn't physical, it's mental. And the Stoics warned us about this long ago. Not all harm comes through cruelty or chaos. Some relationships drain you quietly, through subtle pressure, unspoken expectations, and emotional imbalance that slowly pulls you away from yourself. You don't notice it at first. You just feel less clear, less grounded, more tense than you used to be. This video isn't about blaming others, and it's not about labeling people as toxic. It's about awareness. Today, we'll explore 8 subtle signs a relationship may be mentally draining you. Signs that are easy to ignore, but dangerous to live with for too long. Because in Stoic philosophy, protecting your inner peace isn't selfish, it's a responsibility. Stay with me. Clarity changes everything. 1. You feel tired. After every interaction, one of the clearest, yet most ignored songs. Signs that a relationship is mentally draining you is this. You feel tired after interacting with that person. Not angry, not upset, just depleted. The conversation might have been polite, even friendly. But once it ends, your energy drops. Your mind feels foggy. Your body wants distance. Stoicism teaches us to pay attention to effects, not appearances. A relationship doesn't need to be loud or hostile to be harmful. If it consistently leaves you feeling weaker, that's information. Think carefully here. This isn't about having a bad day. This is about a pattern. Every time you talk to them, you subtly brace yourself. You monitor your words. You manage their mood. You adjust your tone. That effort costs energy. The Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. The same is true for relationships. Spend enough time in an emotionally unbalanced dynamic, and your inner state begins to absorb that weight. A healthy connection doesn't require constant emotional labor. You don't need to perform. You don't need to regulate someone else's feelings just to keep things calm. Now here's the Stoic distinction that matters. Feeling challenged is not the same as feeling drained. Growth can be uncomfortable. Honest conversations can be intense, but they don't leave you hollow. Draining relationships do something else. They pull you out of yourself. You walk away replaying the interaction, second-guessing what you said, wondering if you were too much or not enough. That mental residue is the cost. And the Stoics were clear on this point. Anything that consistently disrupts your inner order deserves examination. Not judgment, not confrontation, examination. Ask yourself this simple question after your next interaction. Do I feel more grounded or more scattered? That answer matters more than explanations, more than intentions, more than how long you've known them. Stoicism doesn't ask you to cut people off impulsively. It asks you to observe without denial. If someone repeatedly leaves you mentally exhausted, something in that dynamic is misaligned. And misalignment, left unaddressed, turns into resentment. Here's the Stoic practice for this sign. For 1 week, don't analyze the person. Analyze your state after contact. No blame, no stories. Just data. Energy up or down, clarity or confusion, calm or tension. And then repeat this line quietly to yourself. Peace should not cost me my energy. That awareness alone begins to restore your power. 2. You over-explain simple feelings. Another subtle sign. A relationship is mentally draining you is this. You find yourself explaining feelings that shouldn't need explaining. Not complex emotions, not deep moral conflicts, just basic human reactions. You say you're tired and feel the need to justify it. You say something bothered you and immediately soften it, defend it, or walk it back. You start adding context, disclaimers, and apologies for simply expressing how you feel. Over time, this becomes automatic. You don't speak from clarity anymore. You speak from caution. Stoicism draws a sharp line here. When you constantly explain yourself, you're no longer communicating. You're seeking permission. And that quietly shifts the balance of power. Epictetus warned that we suffer not because of events, but because we surrender authority over our judgments. Over-explaining is one of the fastest ways to do that. Think about what's happening beneath the surface. You're anticipating resistance. You're managing how your words might land. You're trying to preempt misunderstanding or disapproval. That mental preparation is exhausting. In a healthy dynamic, clarity is enough. I'm not comfortable with that. I need some space today. That didn't sit right with me. No speech is required, but in draining relationships, simple statements feel risky. So you cushion them, you dilute them, you hope they'll be easier to accept. That's not communication, that's self-erosion. But here's the Stoic insight most people miss. The need to over-explain is often a signal that your boundaries aren't being respected, even if no one is openly crossing them. You're adapting to the environment instead of standing firmly within yourself. And the cost isn't just fatigue, it's confusion. You start losing confidence in your own perceptions. You wonder if your feelings are valid enough. You rehearse conversations in your head long after they're over. That's mental drain. Now, Stoicism doesn't tell you to become cold or abrupt. It teaches precision. Say less, but mean it more. Here's a simple Stoic practice. The next time you express a feeling, say it once, clearly, without justification. Then stop. Notice what happens, not just in them, but in you. Do you feel anxious, exposed, relieved? And that reaction tells you more about the relationship than any discussion ever could. Repeat this reminder. Clarity does not need defense. When a relationship requires constant explanation just to maintain emotional balance, it's not asking for communication. It's asking for compliance. And a Stoic never trades self-respect for acceptance. 3. You start questioning your own reactions. A quietly dangerous sign. A relationship is mentally draining you is this. You begin to doubt your own reactions, not in a reflective, healthy way, but in a shrinking way. You feel hurt, then immediately ask yourself if you're overreacting. You feel uncomfortable, then tell yourself you're being dramatic. You feel something is off, then talk yourself out of it. Over time, this self-questioning becomes your default. Stoicism places enormous importance on clear judgment, not emotional suppression, clear judgment. And when your judgment is constantly undermined, even subtly, your inner stability starts to erode. Here's the key distinction. Stoicism teaches self-examination, but self-examination is not self-distrust. There's a difference between asking, "Is my reaction aligned with reason?" and asking, "Am I allowed to feel this at all?" Draining relationships blur that line. Nothing overt may be said. No one has to call you sensitive or irrational. The effect still happens. Your confidence in your own perceptions weakens. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to trust his reason. Because once you lose that, you lose your anchor. Ask yourself this. Do you regularly replay conversations, trying to decide whether your emotional response was justified? Do you feel the need to consult others just to confirm that what you felt was normal? That's not growth. That's destabilization. A healthy relationship may challenge your views, but it does not make you feel unreliable to yourself. When a connection repeatedly leaves you unsure of your own internal compass, it creates dependence. As you start looking outward for validation instead of inward for clarity. That's mental drain at its core. Stoicism doesn't demand emotional perfection. It demands honest perception. If something consistently unsettles you, that signal matters, even before you fully understand it. Here's a Stoic practice for this sign. The next time you feel the urge to invalidate your own reaction, pause and ask, if I trust my reason, what is it pointing to right now? Not what feels convenient, not what keeps the peace. What feels true? You don't need to act on it immediately. Stoicism values restraint, but you do need to acknowledge it. Repeat this quietly. My perceptions deserve respect. When you stop gaslighting yourself, clarity begins to return, and clarity is the beginning of freedom. 4. Silence feels safer than honesty. One of the most telling signs a relationship is mentally draining you is this. You choose silence not out of wisdom, but out of self-protection. You don't speak up because it feels easier to stay quiet. Not because you've reflected and chosen restraint, but because honesty feels like it would cost too much. You avoid certain topics. You soften truths before they leave your mouth. You let things pass, even when they sit heavy inside you. At first, this feels like peace. But Stoicism draws a clear distinction here. Silence chosen from clarity is strength. Silence chosen from fear is erosion. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of living in accordance with truth, not for others, but for the integrity of one's own soul. When you consistently swallow your honesty to keep a relationship stable, the stability is false. It's borrowed from your own inner order, and the cost accumulates. You start feeling tense before conversations. You rehearse what not to say. You leave interactions feeling tight, unresolved, incomplete. That's not harmony. That's containment. A healthy relationship can tolerate discomfort. It can hold disagreement without punishment. But draining relationships teach you subtly that honesty creates friction you'd rather avoid. So you adapt. And adaptation without alignment leads to exhaustion. Here's the Stoic insight most people overlook. Peace that depends on your silence is not peace. It's avoidance wearing the mask of maturity. Stoicism does not demand bluntness or constant confrontation. It values right timing and measured speech. But it never asks you to betray your own clarity. And here's a simple Stoic check. Ask yourself after staying silent, did this silence protect my values or just the comfort of the moment? If it's the second, take note. You don't need to speak immediately. You don't need to confront, but you do need to stop confusing self-erasure with wisdom. Repeat this line slowly. Truth kept inside becomes tension. When silence consistently feels safer than honesty, something in the relationship is asking you to disappear. And Stoicism is not the art of disappearing. It is the discipline of standing intact. 5. Your growth makes them uncomfortable. A subtle but powerful sign a relationship is mentally draining you is this. The more you grow, the more tension appears. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've changed at all. You become calmer. They become irritated. You set small boundaries. They push back. You stop reacting the way you used to, and something in the dynamic shifts. Stoicism teaches that growth is an internal process. It doesn't need permission. But not everyone benefits when you become more grounded. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some relationships are built on who you were, not who you're becoming. When you start responding instead of reacting, when you stop explaining yourself, when you detach from emotional games, you disrupt the old balance, and disruption makes people uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must accept others as they are, but he never said we must remain the same to keep them comfortable. A healthy relationship adapts. It recalibrates. A draining one resists. You may notice subtle signals. They mock your calmness. They frame your boundaries as distance. They say you've changed with an edge. That reaction isn't proof you're doing something wrong. It's often proof that the old dynamic relied on your emotional availability in ways that no longer serve you. Here's where Stoic clarity matters. You are responsible for your character, not for preserving patterns that keep others comfortable at your expense. Growth naturally creates friction, but meaningful connections adjust. They don't punish. If your self-improvement consistently creates tension, guilt, or pushback, you ask yourself, am I evolving or am I being pulled back to maintain familiarity? That question cuts through confusion. Stoicism does not romanticize loyalty to stagnation. It honors progress toward virtue. Here's a Stoic reframe for this sign. Discomfort in others is not your failure. It's information. Repeat this quietly. My growth does not require their approval. When a relationship becomes heavier, the stronger you become, it's not a coincidence. It's a signal. 6. You carry emotional weight that isn't yours. One of the most exhausting signs a relationship is mentally draining you is this. You are carrying emotional weight that does not belong to you. You feel responsible for how they feel. You anticipate their moods. You adjust your behavior to prevent discomfort. Theirs, not yours. And over time, this becomes invisible labor. You don't announce it. You don't even consciously choose it. You simply start managing the emotional atmosphere. Stoicism is very precise about responsibility. You're responsible for your judgments, your choices, and your actions. You are not responsible for regulating another adult's emotions. When that boundary dissolves, mental exhaustion follows. At first, this emotional carrying feels like care, like loyalty, like maturity, but there's a quiet shift that happens. You stop asking, "What do I feel?" and start asking, "How will they react?" That shift is costly because your attention moves outward, constantly. You scan for signs of disappointment. You soften your truth to keep them steady. You absorb their frustration, their anxiety, their dissatisfaction, and treat it as your job to fix. Stoicism calls this a mistake of control. Epictetus warned that trying to manage what isn't ours to manage enslaves the mind. And emotional responsibility is one of the most seductive forms of that trap. Here's the hard truth. When you carry someone else's emotional weight long enough, you begin to neglect your own inner order. You become tired without knowing why. You feel irritated but suppress it. You feel resentful, then feel guilty for that resentment. And that internal conflict is draining. A healthy relationship allows emotional exchange, not emotional transfer. Each person owns their reactions. Each person regulates their inner state. But draining relationships quietly reverse that. You become the stabilizer, the buffer, the emotional shock absorber, and no one asks how heavy that is for you. Stoicism doesn't teach indifference. It teaches proper placement of responsibility. Care does not mean carrying. Empathy does not mean absorption. If someone is upset, you can acknowledge it without owning it. If someone is disappointed, you can listen without self-blame. Here's a simple Stoic test to clarify this sign. After interacting with them, ask, "Am I processing my emotions or theirs?" If the answer is theirs, something is off. And here's the deeper layer. First, when you carry emotional weight that isn't yours, you unintentionally teach the other person not to carry it themselves. The dynamic becomes unbalanced. You grow tired, they grow dependent, and neither of you becomes stronger. Stoicism values relationships that sharpen character, not ones that erode it through quiet overextension. Here's the Stoic practice for this sign. When someone expresses a strong emotion, pause internally and say, "This feeling is theirs. My role is to respond with clarity, not to absorb." Then choose your response, calmly, deliberately. Not to fix, not to rescue, but to stay aligned. Repeat this reminder. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. When you stop carrying what isn't yours, your energy begins to return. And that return is not selfish. It's necessary. 7. You feel relief when you're apart. One of the most revealing signs a relationship is mentally draining you is this. You don't miss them when you're apart. You feel relief. Not excitement, not longing, just a quiet sense of lightness. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows. Your mind feels less crowded. And that relief tells the truth faster than words ever could. Stoicism teaches us to observe our natural state when external pressures are removed, because the body often recognizes imbalance long before the mind accepts it. Ask yourself honestly, when you're away from them, do you feel more like yourself, more clear, more at ease? If the answer is yes, that's not a coincidence. Relief is not a moral failure. It's a signal. Many people ignore this sign because it feels uncomfortable to admit. They tell themselves relief means they're ungrateful, cold, disloyal. But Stoicism is not built on guilt. It's built on alignment with reality. And here's the reality. Healthy relationships don't require recovery time. You may enjoy space. That's normal. You may value solitude. Stoics certainly did. But you don't feel better simply because someone is absent. When absence feels like oxygen, something in the presence was suffocating. This doesn't mean the other person is bad. And it doesn't mean the relationship was meaningless. It means the dynamic demanded more from you than it gave back. Often, this relief comes from very subtle pressures. The pressure to be emotionally available on demand. The pressure to maintain a certain role. The pressure to stay agreeable, calm, or accommodating. You may not even consciously register these pressures, but your nervous system does. And when they're gone, the system resets. Stoicism invites us to trust these responses, not dramatize them, but respect them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that peace comes from living in accordance with one's nature. If you consistently feel more natural when someone isn't around, that deserves reflection, not immediate action. Reflection. Here's the important distinction Stoicism makes. Relief is not the same as avoidance. Avoidance is running from discomfort. Relief is the return of equilibrium. When you're avoiding someone, you feel tension even in their absence. When you're relieved, you feel whole again. That difference matters. Another layer most people miss. Relief often appears when you've been suppressing parts of yourself to maintain the relationship. Your opinions, your pace, your emotional limits. When you're alone, those parts quietly return. You don't feel lonely, you feel intact. Stoicism does not ask you to sacrifice inner order to maintain external connection. In fact, it warns against it. Here's a simple Stoic reflection for this sign. Spend one full day without contact. No messages, no checking, no mental rehearsing. At the end of the day, ask yourself, do I feel restored or empty? Restoration points to truth. Emptiness points to attachment. Neither answer condemns you, but only one guides you wisely. And here's the hardest truth to face. If distance consistently brings peace, closeness must be examined, not attacked, not judged, was examined. Stoicism values clarity over comfort. Repeat this quietly. Relief reveals what effort was hiding. When you stop dismissing relief as something shameful, you reclaim an essential compass. And that compass leads you back to yourself. 8. You stay out of obligation, not choice. The final and most decisive sign. A relationship is mentally draining. You is this. You stay because you feel you have to, not because you actively choose to. You tell yourself things like, we've known each other for so long. They've been there for me before. It would feel wrong to step back now. None of these are expressions of desire. They are expressions of obligation. Stoicism asks a hard but necessary question: are you acting from virtue or from fear of guilt? Because those two can feel similar on the surface, but they lead to very different inner states. When you stay by choice, there is energy. Even when things are imperfect, you feel present, engaged, willing. But when you stay out of obligation, something else happens. You start counting emotional costs. You feel trapped by history. You override your own needs to preserve continuity, and over time, obligation turns into resentment, not outward resentment. Stoics warn against that, but quiet, internal resentment that corrodes peace. Here's the Stoic truth most people avoid. Past connection does not justify present self-betrayal. Seneca warned that clinging to what no longer serves us out of habit is one of the great traps of the mind. Time invested is not a moral contract. Yet many people remain in draining relationships because leaving feels like a moral failure. Stoicism disagrees. Virtue is not measured by endurance alone. It is measured by alignment with reason and character. Ask yourself this, honestly, without drama. If I met this person today, knowing who I am now, would I choose this relationship? Not tolerate it. Not justify it. Choose it. That question bypasses guilt and goes straight to truth. And truth matters, because obligation-based relationships quietly distort your inner compass. You stop acting from clarity. You start acting from avoidance, of discomfort, conflict, or self-judgment. You stay so you won't feel like the bad one, so you won't disappoint, so you won't disrupt the image of who you're supposed to be. But Stoicism never asked you to perform goodness. It asked you to live it. And living it sometimes means acknowledging that a relationship no longer aligns with your values, even if it once did. This does not require anger. It does not require confrontation. It does not require explanation. Stoic distance can be quiet, reducing contact, rebalancing access, returning energy to yourself. The goal is not punishment. The goal is restoration. Here's an important distinction. Leaving out of clarity is different from leaving out of emotion. Emotion seeks escape. Clarity seeks integrity. And integrity is the Stoic standard. When you remain in a relationship purely out of obligation, you sacrifice something essential, your ability to act freely. And without freedom, virtue becomes impossible. You can't be generous if you feel trapped. You can't be kind if you're resentful. You can't be honest if you're staying to avoid guilt. Stoicism teaches that character must come before comfort. That includes the comfort of familiar roles. Here's a Stoic reflection to close this sign. Write down 2 lists. On one side, what this relationship asks of me. On the other, what this relationship gives back. Not in theory, in lived experience. And if the imbalance is consistent, the message is clear, even if the decision isn't immediate. And here's the final reminder. Choosing yourself does not mean abandoning others. It means refusing to abandon your own inner order. Repeat this quietly. I choose relationships that I would choose again. When obligation replaces choice, the mind grows tired. When choice returns, strength follows. If any of these signs felt familiar, pause for a moment. Not to judge yourself, not to rush into decisions, but to acknowledge something important. Mental exhaustion doesn't always come from conflict. Sometimes it comes from endurance without alignment. Stoic philosophy never taught us to tolerate what slowly breaks our inner order. It taught us to observe clearly and act with reason. You've just explored 8 subtle ways a relationship can drain you mentally. Not through cruelty, not through chaos, but through quiet imbalance. And the most important thing to remember is this. Awareness alone changes the dynamic. You don't need dramatic exits. You don't need confrontations fueled by emotion. You don't even need answers right away. What you need is honesty. First with yourself. Ask yourself calmly, where am I losing energy? Where am I shrinking instead of standing firm? Where am I staying out of obligation rather than choice? Stoicism does not demand isolation. It does not reject connection. It demands integrity. Relationships are meant to strengthen character, not quietly erode it. They should challenge you, not confuse you. Support you, not drain you. If distance is needed, it can be taken with dignity. If boundaries are needed, they can be set without anger. If change is needed, it can begin internally. And sometimes the most stoic act is not endurance, but discernment. You are not responsible for preserving every bond at the cost of your peace. You are responsible for the state of your mind. So take what resonated, leave what didn't, and choose one small act of clarity today, even if it's just awareness. Because inner peace is not something you find after everything is fixed. It's something you protect while you're still becoming. If this reflection helped you, share it with someone who feels tired but can't explain why. And stay grounded. Clarity is strength,